Ben removed his fingers from the arms of his favorite chair when he realized he could feel the foam underneath them, on both armrests. A quick glance told him what he already knew. His pathological need to grab onto what he thought was hard had caused real damage in the form of torn upholstery. It is significant that he felt the sensation of the insides of his shelter before the pain from the incredible spasm of the muscles of his fingers. Probably because it was physical pain, and at the moment, physical pain was bullshit. He carefully raised his hands and with difficulty gained control of himself, placing his palms on his hands and holding them in that position. He smiled, considering this exercise good training for what would come next. Well, maybe not very much. This really couldn't happen. Adequate practice, he believed. Better than nothing. Regardless, those few seconds had to wait, because that was all he got before the front door finally creaked open and the golden rays of the morning sun streamed outside onto the toned figure of the woman standing there with key in hand, with such an expression on her pale, beautiful face, as if she was surrendering to prison to begin serving her sentence. Barbara's green eyes sparkled, and she absent-mindedly and carefreely brushed a strand of her fiery red hair out of them. The curls easily stayed in their new position behind the ear because they were still damp. They were damp because she had recently taken a shower. Ben had no doubt about that, and he had no doubt about why. "Where are the girls?" Barbara glanced with her stunning eyes past her husband onto the stairs, and the question sounded quietly, barely an audible whisper. Imperceptibly, unconsciously, one hand began to fiddle with the tight black dress that hugged those curves, as if she was subconsciously trying to remove the traces of her recent violence against him. Pointless, but she didn't stop. "Where are the girls?" Ben grabbed onto the false calm with such force that his armrests would be envied. "Are you sure this is what you want to ask? Or do they know what I did?" He saw it in her face. After 20 years of living side by side, it was easy to read my wife and understand that she really hoped that he didn't know what she did. He watched this trifling spark die. It was appropriate. "They are sleeping." Ben was generous in answering her question, more merciful than anyone else in history. "They went to bed thinking you had too much to drink and went to see Cynthia since she always provides the driver and her house is much closer to the event." He snorted. "I guess partly right? Well, that is, in terms of drinking. Where you fell." He raised his palms to the ceiling and shrugged. "A one-room apartment draped in leopard print velvet? You know, I hate it when you're so sarcastic." Barbara pursed her lips and turned away from him, blushing with guilt. "Sorry, I didn't want to break down. It's difficult. I don't know what to say." Ben realized that he did too. What can I say? The English language is rich, varied, and full of contexts. So he simply let the first thing that came into his mouth come out. Was it worth it? Barbara, staggering as if still drunk, walked over to the chair usually reserved for guests, sank helplessly onto it, and buried her face in her hands. Without looking up, she simply muttered, "I want to ask what the price is." Wow, the answer was wrong. "Damn it, Barb!" Ben barely managed to hold back an exclamation so as not to scream as he deserved. His children were still upstairs, sleeping, puzzled, protected, for now. However, he leaned forward, making sure his wife didn't miss one iota of what was inside him. "You say it can cost to go? That the fact that you have a horny party planner maybe be normal? If what? If you can keep your happy lying life intact?" "God, no, Ben. It came out..." Barbara looked at him again, but her sincere emotional plea was suddenly interrupted. "Lying? What do you mean, deceitful? I am happy with your life." She leaned forward. "With you. Day. Mo." Ben sank back into the chair, away from her outstretched, searching hand. "Happy people don't do what you did, my dear. Decent wives don't shamelessly flirt with fashionable gym rats for weeks and then tell their husbands they're crazy for being wary." He was already on his feet, although he did not remember getting up. "Damn, Barb, when I first came to see how your project was going, support your loving wife." You tried to tell me that he is gay. Barbara blushed and looked away. You shouldn't... I remember... Yes? Do you remember how I actually physically removed his hand from you? That this had to happen twice before you dropped that lie and moved on to warning me against attacking him because he's the type who would definitely call the police? Then she sobbed. Yes. Ben, honey. He narrowed his eyes and took a step towards her. Fine. The exam has been passed. Your brain is still working. Although I still have a lot of new questions. Let's start with this. What is the ultimatum? Ultimatum? She sounded genuinely puzzled. When I told you that everything was already done, yours and Cynthia's charity ball. When I said that what I saw was too much, and I'm not an idiot. Ben looked up at the ceiling, collecting his thoughts before meeting her gaze. And you said that I'm an idiot. And what if I'll forbid something for you? You show me how much. That ultimatum, the one you put forward the day before you left last night, informing me that I could not accompany you. So why? The best defense is a good offense? Barbara laced her fingers together in her lap and studied them intently. What should I have said? The truth. That another man got into my head and stayed there, no matter how hard I tried to get him out? That I was struggling, losing, because I didn't know how to play the game? That I feel something for a man that I haven't felt since college, because you and I are so intertwined that it's no longer an adventure? She finally looked up, and Ben was surprised by the sincerity he saw there. I forgot, Ben. I forgot what was true. I forgot you, even though you were right in front of me. She sobbed again, and real tears began to well up. You are a victim of your own success, my eternal love. You're good, too good. I have never been tested before because you make me happy, my life easy, and my soul content. Todd. She bit her bottom lip briefly because of what she saw in him. And he was like a one-in-a-million guy who was in the right place at the right time. She shrugged her shoulders. I don't even know such a word. He turned me over. Flipped over? She shook her head. I don't know. Yes, flipped over. He figured out how to put me upside down and smash me. Shit, I mean... The redness of her cheeks told Ben that a sudden recent memory was coming too close to her words. And then he somehow shared the visual perception without being near his wife and her nightly gymnastics. Bare asses, they take turns driving piles, bent spines and fingers curled like claws. I'm leaving. His coat somehow came off the hook and into his hand, and he took a step toward the still open front door before Barbara was on her feet. Are you leaving? What? Why? Where? She swallowed, trying to regain control of herself. Ben, stay with me. Please, please, I need... You need to? Ben stopped, but did not turn to her. That's the problem, isn't it? He turned his head just enough to catch her out of the corner of his eye. You know? I'll tell you where I'm going, since I only guess now. He looked at his watch. It's Sunday morning, 7 o'clock. I'm going to let myself into the office, and since no one will be there, I can have the privacy to look through the employee roster and find Candace Tennant's address. Dandy! Candy? Barbara's voice sounded completely horrified. With fake ones, Ben, no. He laughed, shocked that he had it in him, even if it was with malicious intent. No, really? Do you forbid me? Interesting. You should think about this a little. In any case, I want to say that the invitation was sent to me more than a year ago. I have refused him so often that my appearance will be a real surprise. But hey, surprises are supposed to be fun, so why do you and I have to take them all? The last thing he heard before he was heard was some kind of howling croaking. It was supposed to be funny, but it wasn't funny at all. However, as he pulled out of his driveway, he was able to put things into perspective. For a 43-year-old man, no, for anyone. He was in great shape. That's a good thing because knowing Dandy Candy has the best body money can buy, he's going to need all the stamina he can get. Barbara lifted her fingers from her favorite chair when she realized that the house was almost completely dark and she could barely see anything inside, that her home is lost to her. The cumbersome poetry of it all was also lost on her, because there was no room for it in her beautiful, flighty head. She wondered if they would turn on the lights and make all the noise that teenage girls usually make, if they were there. As it was, she sent them to Cynthia an hour after they woke up, saying that she and her father had special plans, and they needed time to work on them without distractions. Another lie was not convincing, but by that time Barbara had nothing else left, and her children were gullible. They trusted because they were good, and they were good because they were raised correctly by a wonderful father, and the mother, who didn't know which side to approach. After this, she returned home and settled down to wait. Barbara knew she had time, perhaps all day, because she knew Ben better than herself. I knew that he was doing exactly what he said, and doing it to the best of his ability. Damn Dandy Candy. It was her day. She was floating in the open waters of her own mind, with no direction and no closer to land. This use of her time was unfortunate because it meant that Barbara was still, let's just say, wandered in the dark when the front door opened. She squinted at the silhouette of the figure standing there, clearly watching her, and didn't know what to say. So she said simply, "How's the slut doing? I hope you took advantage of the protection. Otherwise, you basically just fucked half the dudes in your..." She pursed her lips. "Too late. Because you stopped at the pharmacy on your way to leopard print heaven." It was strange to receive the cold truth from a foggy blob of shadow, but it was the truth, and Barbara did not react except to hug her pajama-clad knees to her chest and press her forehead to them. Hidden like this, she could only listen to her husband shuffle his feet, expressing his disappointment without words. "You're angry," he finally spoke after an eternity, and when she raised her head, he loomed over her. "You're angry. This..." What did he expect? What did he want her to say? "Are you angry? And that's all? Your husband? The man you've told repeatedly you value and love, just spent hours having sex with a woman you can't stand, and you're just getting angry. You just..." Barbara saw Ben's life force leave him before he turned on his heel and walked in the opposite direction. "Don't wait for me until the morning." This time, the door slammed shut without an awkward exclamation from her. In another life, this might have meant something. Ben's morning return home was reminiscent of the first act of a stage production. First, he greeted the family sitting at breakfast. He had somehow managed to figure out the lie Barb had told their daughters, and then convinced them that he had been out all night running an errand, even hinting, through the bile in his throat, that it had something to do with his wife's charity work. He felt bad, and not only because of the merciful deception. The hours spent hanging out with Dandy Candy were, well, some of those not to be forgotten. This, in fact, was the point, to throw everything out of his head and forget about his rotten life for as long as possible. But it also did not leave room for planning what to say to the children, whom he, to his shame, forgot against the backdrop of his own spiritual pain. So, given an easy way to dodge the bullet, he took it and joined in with Barb's lies. And yes, he felt bad because he knew that he had taken advantage of his daughter's naivety. Their happy, trusting natures, raised by a mother who was phenomenal, until, apparently, she forgot. "Girls, you'll be late for the bus." Ben smiled at his treasures as they simultaneously hugged him goodbye, conveyed the same to their mother, and then, giggling, walked out the door. He looked for a long time in the direction where they had gone. A very long time. Enough for what he was doing to become too obvious. "Ben, we have to do this." He heard Barbara get up from the breakfast table. "I'm not angry and I'm not going to scream." "I won't, I swear. I'm going to the living room now. Please sit with me." Although it was petty, he waited until he was sure she was out of sight before turning around. After a moment's hesitation, he finally followed her and returned to the heart of their home, where his dear wife of almost half his life had waited in her chair, turning her face towards his favorite chair. She looked at him silently over her shoulder with pleading eyes so loud that they might as well have been screaming. He sighed, resigned himself to the torture he knew was coming, and sat down. "I understand now. Understand." Barb's voice was quiet, and she could only look at his chin when she spoke, but she spoke clearly and understandably. "You needed me to feel it. That's why what I said last night pissed you off." She hiccuped and ran her thumb across her cheek under her eye. "Knocked you out of yourself. You didn't care." Ben realized that his eyelids were drooping and suddenly raised them back. "When I returned, you attacked me, angry at me, blaming me. Doesn't matter? Doesn't matter." Barb perked up. Her shiny green eyes became completely round. "Ben? God, I was dying inside. How could you not see this? I wasn't actually angry. Damn it, I was creating a shield." She tried to crawl out of the hole, clinging with her claws. "I don't blame you, and I didn't blame you last night. I know it happened because of me. Damn it, I know it." She banged her little fists on the arms of the chair. "And when I saw you, when I had to face what you did, I didn't know how to react. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know who—" She stopped herself and looked away. "Who I was. Ben was made of stone. It sucks, doesn't it?" Barb hung her head, covering her face with her red curls. "Sorry, I feel like—" "Here it is." Ben screamed so hard that a drool flew from his lips. "Do you understand that this is the first time you have apologized? Understand? From the moment you walked through that door yesterday morning, you've been shy, evasive, even belligerent as hell. But you've never once said you're sorry until now. Until you're backed into a corner." He shook his head. I don't believe you, Barb. I owe it to say." She was quick, and somehow she took his hand in hers before he realized it. "My God, for decades we were practically the same person. How could you not see that with every fiber of my being I regretted ever looking at this man? No part of what happened was worth even a second of the pain I felt." "What pain?" Ben leaned back. "No, I'm serious. Describe her. You said that now you understand everything. Describe what kind of pain it is." He clenched his teeth. "Revive her for me. It hurts to breathe." She didn't hesitate. Not for a moment. "I was perfectly aware of every second, but for some reason it seemed that every second was passing at a speed of 1,000,000 miles per hour. Your chest is tense, squeezed." Ben looked up at her. "It's a physical sensation, not something you're translating from a mournful love song you once heard." He winced. "This is real pain." A small sob escaped Barbara's lips, and she nodded. "Torment. It feels like my body has aged 50 years in one day. My bones hurt. You did it. With both of us. I did it." This time she didn't hang her head. "I never thought I could. I am not who I said I was." She swallowed. "Even worse, I'm not who I thought I was. You. But you want me to... What? Forgiven? Does a person forgive the truck that ran over him?" Barbara blinked at Ben. Then she blinked again. Can you really ask this question? Do I want you to forgive me? Ben, without forgiveness, there is no you, and I would rather break my bones than live without you. Broken bones won't stop your ass from being used by others, so it's a good deal for you, isn't it? It was rough and cruel. He knew it, but he wasn't going to stop. That's not... Barb rolled her eyes lostly. What can I say to this? Your trust in me is broken, I understand, but one night cannot erase 20 years. It simply can't. I screwed up in ways that none of us could have imagined, but I didn't have a brain transplant. I had a moment of weakness. And this will never happen again? Ben growled at her. Are you saying that you found the only guy other than me in this world that you'll ever find attractive, and now that you have him, you're ready to settle down forever? No. Do you think I never found other men attractive before smooth-talking Todd? Lord, you know that I don't really like false modesty. Look at me. I've been fighting off men trying to seduce me since our first date. Hot men whose hotness didn't matter to me in the slightest because I had your delicious, loving, fantastic ass. Then what the fuck, Barb? What happened this time? I saw this asshole, and there are a dime a dozen like him. Nothing stays the same forever, Ben. Nothing. Barb's nostrils flared and her blush rose to her hair. Every fortress has vulnerabilities if you don't pay attention to them. Mine was larger than I expected. The beautiful decorations inside made me think the gate was still as good as new, until the barbarian came with a battering ram. I don't even know what this means. Ben drooped, quickly losing energy. How is that supposed to convince me that you are trustworthy? I am the child who touched the burning stove. Barbara even giggled. Almost literally, we established how much pain I was in. How many kids do this twice? Pain teaches. Suffering is a masterclass in life. She stopped, and an expression of horror suddenly flashed across her face. Barbara closed her eyes and ran her hands over her face. God, I can't deny what's probably going to happen, can I? Even if you can't live with what I did, if you do, you will leave. She shuddered and sighed. I will never do this again. No matter what form of existence I find myself in, I will never let my guard down, and I will never again take my powers for granted. Ben hid his face in his hands and was silent. It was too hard. However, after a while, he felt his wife carefully, tenderly touch his shoulder. Do you know what you didn't ask me? The question I've been waiting for since I saw you in that chair yesterday? Why did you spend the whole night with him? Ben muttered. I didn't ask because I know and I'm not ready to hear it out loud. I'm not protected, as you would say. Barb pulled her hand back. You know, you do not. He's, what, a few years under 30? I think it took about a minute. You enjoyed yourself for hours. Why were you with Candace all night after you were with her all day? Ben raised his head, angry. You can't wait to avoid going on the attack again, huh? I don't. Barbara raised her hands, pleading. It was not an attack. Like I said, I understand everything. It's killing me, but I understand. No, I mean, what exactly kept you there? Sex? Was she better than me? Did you enjoy spending time with her more than with me? Because I don't believe in it. Crazy. But Ben couldn't help but grin. Like you said, no false modesty, right? Well, she really knows what she's doing. And she was, grateful when I knocked on her door. Honestly, it was amazing. Shouldn't be surprising, but it doesn't matter because I'm better. Barbara grinned, and for a moment Ben saw the racy girl he fell in love with on their first date. So that's not why you kept having sex. You kept having it because you had something to prove. Flag. God, what then was it supposed to prove? You? For the first time? Not a damn thing. I was a slobbering idiot who let things fester for too long, held a grudge against my overly shrewd husband, and drank too much at the worst possible time. Hell, I barely remember driving to his house. She paused. And, yes, there was some kind of leopard print. Barb shook her head as if she'd heard a bad jokey. We had sex. He was sweating. It was good, I think. She shrugged. And it was fast, and I was on edge. Then, damn. Then the fog cleared and I thought I had something to prove. I almost don't want to know. I can't imagine this will help. If you want, I'll keep it to myself. To hell, just say. Barbara nodded, but was silent for at least 20 seconds before she continued. I will never be able to express enough regret for what happened, but I feel it in every cell. I love you with all my being, but what I did that night wasn't because of you. No, not directly. She looked at her husband, and when he twirled his finger for her to continue, she nodded again. The first round was due to the pressure that was growing, as I already said. This is not an excuse, but it is a reason. Then, God, I'm sorry. Then the drinking stopped playing a role. and I realized with horror that I had cheated. With an asshole. At that moment, damn it, at that moment my panic and self-preservation took over, and I told myself that Todd was a master of seduction, that he must be the god of sex, and I simply found myself helpless before his spell. "So when he egged you on for another round, are you really?" She moaned. Okay. That time I thought that if I was helpless, then I was helpless. Helpless women who are victims of a strong personality, they go with the flow, I think. I don't know, they're subdued or some other crap. Too much melodrama, Barb. This is madness. This is what you understand in the light of day. At night, when you have sex, you stop thinking. She rocked back and forth, her nervous energy boiling over, as well as her words. It was the worst possible combination. The dam broke from the very first hole. The asshole was determined, and I had the idea that if I was cheating on my ideal husband, I would have to be helpless to do it. It was something I clung to avoid looking myself in the eye. This was what I had to prove. And you proved it. All. Having sex. All night long? Ben slammed his fist on the chair. I slept all damn night. I passed out after we fucked each other, I think 3 times. I was swimming in gin, what did you expect? The shame of what I did will stay with me for the rest of my life. I know that. But the act itself, it lasted, I think, about 15 minutes. 15 minutes of mediocre sex that I had already forgotten. 15 minutes, and now I'm on life support. She began to cry, and Ben had to fight himself not to hug her. Knowledge is not power, my love. It is a curse. I know this because right here, right now, I am fucking Einstein. I see all the equations, and my heart breaks for both of us. I don't see them. Ben threw his hands up. I really don't see it. Enlighten me. Say you understand. That none of us is what the other thinks he is. Ben had to admit that he didn't expect this. She has courage. He had to give her credit. This, not the one you took me for. Oh no, you're not like that. She reached for him again, and he pulled back. She nodded as if she had been expecting this, and it made him boil. I still don't blame you. And I will never blame you for my mistakes. I am not a psychopath, despite what you think now. But this last day burst all the beautiful bubbles that used to fill my head. The first is despite the fact that I cannot imagine myself without you. I cannot even imagine a picture where you are not next to me. I betrayed you, stabbed me in the heart after you warned me about what would happen next, after you told me that you saw the same thing as me, but deliberately ignored it. This is a gross illusion that can be lost, a sense of one's own virtue. Everyone at least starts out as the hero of their own story. And I haven't lost that feeling, if that's what you want to say. Ben tried to control his breathing. Candy, right? It was necessary. You're too smart not to understand why I did it, you said it yourself. Because I needed to feel your pain. Not guilt, but loss. Yes, after a day and night of doing nothing but facing reality. I agree. Mostly. Only mostly. But now you're lying. To yourself. More than to me. Now Barbara was calm. The tears have dried. You told yourself that if we still have a future together, I should know what you went through. I have to feel the pain, otherwise I'll just inflict it again. It makes sense, and I really, really love you for it because it shows that you still... I want it. You want me. Her voice fell, at least a little. So it's a lie? That is the only reason you had sex with another woman. The rest, maybe even the biggest thing, although I hope not, is that you were hurt and needed an outlet. Something was taken away from you and you needed balance. She looked at him long and intently. Revenge, clean and simple. It's not... I never thought you had it in you. Barbara is right. Ben knew this. He would never forget how fiercely he had Candy until she kicked him out of her house. Then, that night, with a mercy he didn't deserve, she let him back in when he returned, and he learned nothing. Even a screaming climax wasn't enough for any sane woman to tolerate the anger he was taking out on her, and the rest of the night at the motel should have ripped the scales from his eyes about it. However, it would have taken a crowbar and sodium pentothal to get him to admit it at that moment. So he simply remained calm. Barb wasn't fooled, he knew it, and she continued. This is a book of fairy tales that is closed on my part. That my husband is perfect. That he wouldn't use pain as a weapon. That he wouldn't walk up to an innocent passerby and treat her like a whore on the corner. That he will not forget his children and will not abandon them all night. How did their mother do it? Like their mother did. She nodded sadly. 20 years later, we are still the same, but in terrible terms. I am stupidly cruel. You are reflexively cruel. It's cruel and fair, and you know it. You took it from yourself. About 3 times, I think. Barbara tilted her head. Now she was confused. This? What is this? 3. I don't... My virtue. He smiled bitterly. My status as a hero is in your eyes. Before you posted this just now, I saw it. You asked me 3 times how I could... I don't know you. Your soul, I suppose. He shrugged. You asked how I couldn't see that you were dying inside, how I couldn't understand that you were completely sorry for what you did, and how I could ask if you even wanted forgiveness. Your confusion was clear as day. You were genuinely shocked that I wasn't just reading your mind. Because you always did. I've never done this. Barb, the ideal hasn't been ripped away, it's tunnel vision. You always do this. Always telling me that I should already know the answer when I ask you a question, and then ignoring it when I get mad about it. You think your idea of my perfection was that I was a saint. The truth is that you just thought we were closer than we ever really were. Her eyes widened, and in an instant, they were wet. No, 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 no. Don't say that. You can't say that. There was a fortress built with vulnerabilities. Ben had to look away. The ram was not needed. No! With a confused cry, she jumped up and grabbed both his hands in hers, squeezing tightly. I see you're giving up. God, please no. Do not give up. Barb, now it's not even about what you did. Ben let her continue to squeeze his hands. Let her have at least this. Not anymore. Not completely. I believe it was a mistake you wish you had never made. I do. But damn, it was a trap door that opened. Now everything is open and it's... Reality? She stammered, trying to maintain at least some coherence. This is reality. This is us. And you can't come to terms with it? Okay, you're right. I never listen. And I'm right. You react on instinct. And it doesn't matter. What? Ben croaked and did not resist when his wife, the mother of his children, his fiancée and girlfriend, pulled him towards her and pressed her forehead to his. Who are we, Barb? Who should they be? Soulmates? Lovers with promises written in the stars or something? People. This word sounded like a sob. We're fucking humans, and that's all we'll ever be. Ever. We can be. Stop it. Just stop. Ben began to take the first weak steps to push her away. Everything is over. Barb wrapped her arms tightly around his neck, and before he could react, she slid from her seat into his lap, wrapping her knees around him and squeezing their bodies in an embrace. Everything hurt from this. Everything inside him, and the breath at his ear, which carried her whisper, burned his skin. If I were chasing perfection, it's nothing compared to what you are now. Ben tried to push her away again, and although he tried a little harder, his hands were noodles, and his heart was on another continent. Barbara stepped back a little, a few centimeters, enough to take his face in her hands and look into him as deeply as she could. Tell me what you will find if you take this nose from me. She ran her finger over the object of her request. What will you get if you take these lips away from me? Now, a finger pressed against his mouth. Tell me what this person deserves and how you will demand it. Tell me who you will give it to, in whom you can be sure that he will never do anything bad to you. He won't say anything offensive. She will never believe that you are wrong. Never make a mistake, small or destructive. Barbara clenched her teeth, trying to hold back a particularly bitter groan. Tell me, what will she look like? This person who will take my place. Please, please, If you ever loved me, tell me what I can never be. Tell me that there is something in the world that will hug you, protect you, and never let you feel pain again. Barb. Her name was like a razor through his throat, and his fingers in her hair were like a steel vice. Tell me, because if she is real, I will love her forever, forgiving you what I simply cannot. Ben closed his eyes and shook his head. What can I even say now? How can I get through this? How can I live with what I know? Ben would like to know whether this question was rhetorical or not. Second by second, Barb pressed her cheek against his shoulder and ran her hands up and down his back. The heart beats in unison with the heart, choosing to accept me. Watch me, evaluate me, and decide if I'm worth the risk. You have to decide that our life together was not a lie and outweighs what is terrible inside both of us. You have to decide that we can be better. She pulled away and kissed him gently for a long time before sighing again. You have to believe that I am better than my weakest moment, and I will withstand every dark look, every bitter word that comes my way. Because I have to believe that you are better than the world wants you to be. Ben felt his wife go limp in his arms, as if those words were all she had left. They stayed like that for a while. She was still laying on his lap, and he gently stroked her back, each not wanting to break the spell, not wanting to let life rob them of this timeless, cobweb-like moment. But life is inexorable, and time cannot be stopped. Ben, my beloved, Ben, what will happen? The whisper was the sound of raw, exposed nerves. Time is running out. Life demands, and Ben is just a man, helpless in front of her cold face. Barbara leaned against the door frame, admiring the view of Cynthia's new pool, located to the side of her new house, in the new, upscale neighborhood her best friend's family had moved into just a couple of weeks ago. She could hear the other housewarming guests talking behind her, but it was the noise and the sight of her two daughters splashing around with their friends that caught her attention and kept it riveted. They were cheerful and happy, and the sight of those faces, the outlines of noses and mouths that were so familiar, began the countdown for the tears that, unfortunately, had also been very familiar to her lately. This is cute, they darlings, but you want to come back inside? Barbara felt Cynthia's hand on her shoulder even before the question was asked. There are a lot of people, also nice ones, who would like to talk to you. Catch up. Pause. Find out news about the hermit. It was a joke, and Barbara knew it. However, she suddenly felt resentment towards her friend with stunning acuteness. Fortunately, she appeared for a moment and disappeared just as quickly when sanity was restored. Smiling only partially, she patted the woman's hand affectionately. Brr, people suck. She turned to see her friend's face. We are all the worst, Cynthia chuckled. A couple of little girls could ruin that theory. Nope, they are not people, they are angels. Barb's grin was depressingly caustic. I am a man, and do you know what I did? I used them shamelessly, without even hesitating. Cynthia frowned, genuinely embarrassed, and Barb laughed good-naturedly. It's been 6 months since... She sighed. Since he left. She winced, but got over it. And from the very first day the girls returned, after spending time in his new house, I asked them about what was happening to him. Hell, I was so inexperienced that after a couple of weeks, even my innocent little cherubs realized what I was really asking. And what about... Has he met anyone else? Barbara began to play with a strand of her fiery hair, suddenly upset, even though she and Cynthia were closer than sisters. I know Ben isn't like that. We're not divorced, and he... She stopped. Was she really going to say that he didn't have it in him, even though she knew for sure that it was a lie? Had she already retreated back into fantasy? It's deeper for this. Cynthia tried to finish for her, and Barbara simply let her. There is no need to throw it all out needlessly. Ben deep, but knows how to rationalize shallow impulses. They both are. She knows that now. The only real question was whether one of them picked up this trait from the other. or whether they developed this crappy little quirk at the same time over their 2 decades together. No. The big question was, does it make any difference anymore? Anyway, the girls weren't trying to hide anything from me, Barbara continued, suppressing her melancholy so she could have a real conversation with her friend. For I think 5 or so of the last 6 months, they had no problem saying that their father spends quite a lot of time alone. Now, well, lack of practice in lying has shown up, and they've stopped answering that particular question. They just say Ben is distracted. Barbie, I don't know what to say. Cynthia's hand tightened on her arm. Barbara wanted to stroke it again, but found that it did not want to let go, and took it in hers to squeeze it, to get an anchor. The other hand, however, was busy wiping her eyes as they met her friends. Paperwork is coming, I can feel it. 6 months in, 6 months of hope are about... She swallowed, then sobbed. It's almost over, I know it. Come with me. Barbara was desperate and becoming a disaster by this point, so she didn't ask questions or resist as Cynthia led her through the house, past the mutterings, to the door to her husband's study. They stopped, and Cynthia looked at her for a long time before speaking again. There's something inside, something that may or may not be good for you. Honestly, I can't say, but I agreed. She turned the knob and started to open the door, but stopped when she saw her friend's reaction. Barbara tensed, every muscle tense, and her lips curled downward in disgust. No, it's just... You can't do what I'm thinking. Cynthia furrowed her brows in sudden rage. Can I? You know, girls, sometimes it seems to me that we have the same brain, and sometimes I'm sure that we are from different planets. I have no idea what you think is waiting for you there. Barbara narrowed her eyes. I remember planning the charity with crystal clarity, Sin. I remember that you were the one who hired the staff, that you were the one who conducted all these ice-breaking exercises that were a little too intimate. She crossed her arms. I never blamed you. I thought you didn't understand what was going on, but now I'm telling you, if you brought Todd so I could chill out and forget about... The blow to her shoulder was light, but not trivial. Fuck you. Just get in there, bitch. Staring like a beached fish and rubbing her shoulder, Barbara watched as Cynthia opened the office door all the way and left the room without another word, bristling like an offended cat and with no less drama. Shaking her head, Barbara decided that curiosity, like a cat, would win, and entered the office. And she almost fainted. Damn, Barb, damn. Maybe you should sit down. Then he was next to her, put his arm around her shoulders, and led her to the sofa against the wall of the spacious room, with a tenderness that made her swear right now to control herself. Ben, God, how, why? The eyes suddenly widened with panic, and the struggle was not to control himself, but to not choke. She looked down at her, still, husband's hands, confident that she would see. Oh God, Sin, she said it wasn't, it might not be good. Sure enough, there was a large brown envelope swaying in his weakened grip. She covered her mouth with her hand and closed her eyes. Everything was quiet for a few seconds. Then she heard a rustling sound as Ben sat down next to her. Finally, she moved her hand but could not lift her eyelids. But it had to be done. Fine, okay. I think I knew this would happen. I was just hoping for girls. I just hoped the little imps would keep their mouths shut. Ben even laughed. It looks like they somehow succeeded. Managed? Barbara opened her stunned eyes and saw that the envelope was also open. The contents turned out to be not legal documents, but photographs. Beautiful. What the hell? Our history was trash. Ben looked into the distance, out the window, while he spoke. It was not just a fiction, but a bad fiction. The setting was too idyllic, the characters too perfect, and the actual plot was ignored because it left you fidgeting in your seat. I know. Barbara leaned back, allowing herself to ease a little of the tension that gripped her. Everything was happy and sunny, and the first dark cloud ruined the whole picture. That's why we're starting to write a new one. Illustrate a new book with details, characters with shitty personality traits that piss everyone off, and illustrations with, details, like dark lines. When her husband shrugged, his stupid, wide grin that Barb missed so much appeared. Crap, I'm not good with metaphors and stuff. She touched his cheek. Ben, you seem strong. She laughed too loudly, unable to contain herself. She felt as if someone had brought her back to life. Damn, I feel like I'm at a poetry recital right now. He smiled at her a little more. Then the smile faded and he let out a big sigh. Barb, I won't apologize. For leaving. I had to. It was too hard to be around you after... Barbara sat up straight again and perched herself next to him, crossing her legs. Understand, you don't have to apologize, but damn, I must be crazy for saying this. Despite her determination, she could only look down at his chest. I don't apologize either. She felt him tense and continued. I'm not sorry for spilling everything the morning you left. I could throw myself at your mercy, declare that I am the worst bastard alive, that I don't deserve you, and that I'm ready to do anything just to stay with you. But that would be an even bigger lie. You are not mistaken. Ben still didn't move, despite the confession. We really deserve each other. She began to look up, moving a few centimeters. With all my being, I know that for each of us there is no one better, and I would not want it to be so. What happened? She froze, then shook her head. Damn, I'll just say it. It was good. This was necessary to ensure that we were honest and that something worse would not happen. Something like we'll wake up one day in 10 years and realize that everything was just emptiness, flimsy. If that had happened, one of us would have screwed up, and who knows if we would have been able to recover from it then. Barbara braced herself, turned her body to finally take him fully into her again, and took his handsome face in her hands. I mean, we're not young anymore, but we are not old either. Ben put his hands on the backs of her hands. And what happened was bad, but tolerable. If it had been worse later, we could have lived these hours bitterly and in vain. We could. Barbara let out a hiccuping laugh filled with glee. Because it won't happen now? Please tell me that's what you mean. Ben picked up photographs in his hands that showed a lonely house in a picturesque forest. The girls liked the idea when I suggested it to them, and Cynthia hates it, but is ready to give me the go-ahead. He snorted slightly. She thinks I'm a coward, I know, but I also know she feels guilty, and I took advantage of that to force her to set it up. Barb rubbed her shoulder again. I'm probably not so guilty anymore. Ignoring this, Ben continued, we are leaving for a month. Let's go to this place that I, already rented. He watched her, and she saw that he was waiting for her indignant outburst in response to his assumption. She responded by clinging to him and throwing her leg over his. I think I understand. A place where it's just us, where we should live without anyone's interference. She smiled. Trial. Cynthia will take the girls. Ben rubbed the back of his head. After I saw them in the pool when I arrived, I think the real problem will be getting them out of here when we get back. There will be two of us to do this, no doubt. Barbara stroked his chest, but not in a sexual sense, but with need. The need to feel him again, to know that he is real and with her. When are we leaving? Ben kissed the top of her head. I can't get enough of your courage. I live for your confidence. She kissed his chin. I hate your giggle. I hate that mole on your forehead. When you kiss me, my manhood hardens every time. And when you try to be creative, I know I'll probably have to massage your ego for a week afterwards. Every time you show ingenuity, I then float in the air for a week. Ben lifted his wife's chin up. One day I'll be an impatient fool again. Probably soon, whether I like it or not. Barbara rolled over and settled on her husband's lap. And I will become a forgetful idiot and will continue to be so until the moment comes when I should wise up. When his lips crashed onto hers, each one of them melted. They kissed like they did on their first date decades ago for a good, very good 10 minutes. Then, 3 times longer, they destroyed Cynthia's husband's new sofa. If Barbara felt guilty about it, well, by that point it was just another item on the list. Afterwards, disheveled and mostly naked, Ben and Barbara looked at each other, and he was the only one who broke the spell, although ironically, it deepened the magic. I hate everything in you that is worthy of hatred, my beloved bride. Luckily for me, I think I'm about to find out that what I can love about you, I mean the real true thing that I'm about to discover, will bury the rest pretty damn deep. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.